Ukraine's High Anti-Corruption Court officially started its work on September the 5th. Its task is to mete out justice in criminal cases which could include high-level corruption, theft of government funds or abuse of power. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the court should aim not just to hand out appropriate punishments, but also to restore the trust of citizens in the judicial system as a whole. Now, Iryna Shyba joins us now to talk about this. She's the Executive Director of the DEJURE Foundation, a non-governmental organisation. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello.
So this has been a long process. The judges officially gave their oath on April the 11th this year. Don't tell me how I remember that. But President Poroshenko was there. And then after that, the recruitment for other staff began as well. So in your opinion, do you think that this new high anti-corruption court firstly has enough staff to deal with the amount of work that they're probably going to get? And secondly, the recruitment process appears to have been very fast, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Let's start with the first question. Regarding the number of judges and the staff, it was calculated based on expectation that the court will hear the cases of top corrupt officials. However, this is not what might happen in the next few months, because we saw there were legislative amendments to the law that said the court should also hear the other corruption cases. According to the State Judicial Administration, it might be more than 3,000 cases like that to be heard by the courts. So President Zelensky already submitted the draft laws that should change the situation, and on September 5th he promised to help the court in a way that it will hear only the cases of top corruption. In this case, NABU will send only 200 cases to the court in the nearest future, so the number would be enough. If the changes to the law are not adopted, obviously the court will be drawn in all these cases that it should not hear at all. Yeah, and it would be sort of information overload almost. In fact, a month ago or so, we had Bogdan Kriklyvenko from the High Anti-Corruption Court. He was here, he's the Chief of Staff, and he actually told us a bit about the recruitment process, which seemed very long, and a lot of due diligence was done. So we can have a listen to him now.
Also, we are providing the additional integrity checking, and not only like legislation practical, but also we are checking all background of the person, what experience, how the relations, income, of course, the electronic declaration we are checking very carefully, and we are trying to find is the real life of the person is the same with the electronic declaration, I mean.
So there we go. That was Bogdan Kriklyvenko in our studio about a month or so ago. I mean, is this sort of a procedure normal for any court, or were there special procedures put in place for this particular High Anti-Corruption Court?
It's just for the anti-corruption court. Obviously, the special court needs a special procedure, especially the one that should deal with the top corruption. That judges could be bribed by the people who will be sitting on the benches on the future. But not only judges, but also the people who will work in the apparatus or will be assistant of the judges, who will have the access to the documents and could actually leak some important information that could harm the investigation. So this is why it was important to do integrity checks, not only for the judges, that was done by the Public Council of International Experts, but also for the people who will work as a staff in the court. And actually, our DEJURE assisted in that as well, and we helped to analyze integrity of the candidates. And luckily, our findings, they were took into account. Yeah,
because you have your sort of recommendations that were used, and as far as I remember, there's the theory part, there's the practical part, and also the interview as well. So it's a very rigorous process. But actually, once they get recruited, are there internal checks as well? So, for example, if a judgment is made in a particular case, is that overseen by anyone else? If perhaps there's a dispute, or perhaps even in general, is there sort of random checks on cases, or not so much?
Yeah, so the first, let's call it check system or mechanism is appeal chamber of the court, because the parties to the case or those who were actually convicted, they could appeal it to the appeal chamber of the court, and this is how they could actually prove that there were some mistakes during procedure, for example. But also there is a High Council of Justice. This is the judicial governance bodies that overwatches or watches over judiciary and judges, and they should make sure that judges conduct their obligations according to the law, and they do not break the judicial ethics. But also the court itself, they are working on the prevention of corruption risk inside of the court. They will have a specific departments and people who will be responsible for monitoring if there are some risks for corruptions or other misbehavior in the courts. They are working on strategy, and obviously there are going to be some integrity checks going on, and there will be some supervision of different work is done, and they also make sure that information is protected. For example, there are secret rooms that are prepared in the court, and that specific cases or specific motions can be heard only in these rooms. Otherwise, there is a danger that information can be leaked.
Oh, very interesting. I didn't know that. Actually, Volodymyr Zelensky, he was at the official opening of the High Anti-Corruption Court, and he actually spoke a bit about what sort of cases the court should expect to receive. We actually have a quote from him now, so we can have a listen.
I know that you're expecting over 200 high-profile cases on theft and corruption among top officials. We will make sure that you can hear these cases freely and that these people are punished. I cannot give you assignments, but as a citizen, I believe it's your duty to punish the corrupt and protect the state, its citizens and investors.
There we go. That was Volodymyr Zelensky. I like the fact he said that I can't give you assignments. That was very, very interesting phrasing there. But what's interesting here is how does a court like this assess which cases it takes on? Because Mr. Zelensky said there's a threshold of around 200. I'm not sure if is that right? 200.
According under current legislation, it should be not 200, but 3.5 thousand cases, because the cases that should be considered by the court are described in the law, and it's kind of at this point almost all corrupt cases that are investigated or are heard in the court.
But surely that's impossible. Now,
yes.
If you have 38 judges, this is meant to be a specialized court. You need investigative judges who have specialities in probably human rights, in rule of law, in other fields.
I totally agree with you, as well as the people who were actually working on the design of the court in the beginning. But this kind of amendment to the law was inserted a bit later by the people who didn't want the court to be effective. In this way, they wanted to undermine the efficiency of the court. And this is what actually Volodymyr Zelensky was talking about, because for now, the court should hear only the cases that were investigated by the NABU. And NABU said there are not more than 230 cases that should be transferred to the Hague. And it's up to the parliament next week to decide, will the court have to hear 3,000 cases or 200?
And what do you think will be the outcome?
As I think that the president made this big promise just this Thursday, so I think that his party, the Servant of the People, will support this decision and will vote on it next week.
Yeah, and we have about 3 or 4 minutes left, and I want to talk a bit about international support as well, because we have a graphic as well of different tweets on social media, both from the European Union delegation in Kiev and also from the US Embassy as well here in Kiev, who congratulated Ukraine and the officials on the sort of new High Anti-Corruption Court. We can see on the screen now, so there's some of the Twitter posts that were put up, some nice photos as well. How important do you think that this international pressure is? Because Artem Sitnik said that there's not really so much political will to drive these changes, but it's the international pressure that is. So do you think that's a fair statement?
Yeah, if we talk about the parliament, the previous parliament, where some members of it are being investigated by the NABU, obviously they didn't have a political will to have the court that might actually punish them and find them liable for corrupt cases. For example, NABU been investigating the cases of members of the parliament Onyshenko, Martynenko, the former head of the state fiscal service, and other top officials. And they want the court to be established. And only by the support of international expert, but also the IMF funding that was a crucial, that Ukraine could get only if the anti-corruption court was established, was crucial for the court to actually be working today.
Yeah. And one final question as well. Is there any way that you will be able to judge in the future if this court is a success or not? How was it measured? What sort of indicators are used?
We will see it quite soon, actually, because let's start from how we knew that the general courts were not doing their work right. We saw that the hearings in the cases of NABU were not opening for more than 2 years. The NABU detectives, they published this anti-ranking of the court cases, and sometimes judges were postponing the cases only because they were saying they are ill for 3 months in a row,
or must have been really ill.
or that there is a bomb in a court, or they were actually accepting different excuses of attorneys and giving them opportunities to actually to postpone the hearings and postpone the final decision. So this will be the first indicator how fair and how quick the judges will hear the cases. Obviously, we will not see decisions till the end of this year. But in the court, there will be 6 investigative judges that will be already deciding on the interim measures and investigative actions. And if they will be allowing, for example, NABU detectives, where there is an evidence to make a search or seize an asset, this is when we will see that the judges and the court are independent.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, hopefully we'll have you back in the studio in a few months and we can talk more about it then. Thank you so much for coming in, though.
Thank you for inviting me.
That was Iryna Shyba, Executive Director of the DEJURE Foundation. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more here on UATV.